for 15 years, maybe 20, a long time. So I understand a lot about Chinese lanterns and the shapes and what they represent, and combining that historical sense with modernity is something that I try to merge together, so we have something that represents the past and the future. In all honesty, when I'm working within Shenzhen, I can find new ways to work with factories. I mean, I came here at the beginning of Bluetooth and the beginning of chargeable battery power. So at that time, there was kind of a revolution going on. Michael Young, and I'm an industrial designer working around the world. I have a studio in Hong Kong now, but spend a lot of time in Avalon. So I've come to launch a chair for Amico, or talk about it, and then talk later at Ada to give my opinion about what I think about copyright design and intellectual property. Intellectual property is a bit of a tough one. Being a designer, it's the kind of thing you want to keep hold of, because the minute you lose it, people can change your designs and do whatever you want. Ultimately, I've actually found I work in China most of the time, and I have a lot more integrity with my Chinese clients, and I've been copied a lot less in Asia than I have been in Europe. I've been copied off by hundreds of students and companies in Europe, whereas in Asia, for some reason, it's never happened to me before. So it's a kind of ironic concept to what most people think is the norm, that China is this copy nation. I mean, I loved it here because I didn't understand anything. I'd always been based in big cities and working in Tokyo or based in London. So for me, coming to Hong Kong was like an escape. So for me, I made an accidental discovery in Hong Kong, surrounded by dried seafood and a hell of a lot of noise. Everything you wouldn't imagine would be an environment to be creative in, but finding it to be the perfect place. You know, it's kind of ridiculous, but a designer generally works with what's around them to survive, and that's like every human being, every creative person. But now that I have more than a ruler and a coffee cup, we've got computers and workshops, my work has generally become more sophisticated, the industrial processes have become more complex. One of my favorite collaborations from the past was probably with Magus, which is a company based in Treviso in Italy, and we designed a doghouse. And this was before there was a boom in pet products. It was one of the first pet products. We didn't design it just because we wanted to compete in the pet product market.
Where did you get your inspiration for this kind of product?
So the inspiration really came from a conversation we had about a product that Rodolfo Veneto designed, the 207, which was a small portable radio. And in many ways at the time that was a revolutionary idea, because it was a radio, you put it in the bag and you took it with you, so you had portable music. A very early version of the iPod as we know it.
Yes.
So when we looked at what we could do within this market, it seemed like a really beautiful way of keeping that story alive and doing it through a legal way.
Okay, so, and is it for anybody, or which is the perfect target of this kind of product?
The market, you know, the audio markets, at least especially in Bluetooth, it's really shifted into some, you know, there's the €50 mark, €30 markup, where people don't really care. You know, MP3 takes people into an area where we don't think of quality sounds. Concept of the Wear It was based on a briefing from a historical Brion Vega item, the TS-207 by Rodolfo Veneto, which was a real revolution at the time that it was designed because it was making the radio portable. Of course, since the radio has often in movability been replaced by portable music and MP3, we wanted to find an entry point into the MP3 market, and having that portability was very much part of this project. So I think the sort of retrospective element was not only about the radio, it was about the concept of repeating an important design from the collection of Brion Vega and bringing it to a new, younger audience. I think where we win is that Brion Vega is one of the most beautiful historical Italian brands, and you can't invent that. You can't buy it. It's history, and that's irreplaceable, and that is what's beautiful about the product. To be honest, I mean, I guess I've been designing for 25 years now, so I'm sort of, practically a fossil, so I came out of probably a different generation of design, which came out of the workshop. It came out of getting dirty, making things. The internet wasn't invented then, so I think to be a designer now is probably ultimately a lot more challenging. There's a lot more manufacturing on the market. There's a lot more, there's a lot more product. The market's so much more price saturated. People try to compete with volume, with less profits. So I'm ultimately glad I'm from my generation of designers. I'm not unhappy about it. So I don't feel like I'm missing out. I like investment in design, and that generally means I can control what I do in terms of shape and form and material. That alone is an exciting thing for me to wake up with every day. So it doesn't matter whether it's a telephone or a watch or a chair. I hadn't designed chairs for years, and because my wife was designing a restaurant, she said, "Can you design a chair?" And I ended up designing 3 of the best chairs I've ever done. So I think you do a lot for love as well. You do a lot, if you feel passionate, you do things as well. I think the design really, we all have our language, but I also respect the language of Amico. Amico is one of those brands which you need to be able to recognize an Amico product in a shop, and that's the sort of the beauty of a strong brand. So I looked at that and combined it with those materials, combined a bit of Michael Young into it, and then we got the Amico chair, and it flowed really beautifully. One of the most smoothest projects I've ever done. He contacted me because he wanted to buy a bicycle I'd designed, and we got talking, and he said, "Why don't you design a chair?" And I thought I'd have a go, and because I've actually been working in the bicycle industry a lot, it actually opened up a lot of new possibilities to work with aluminium that I don't think you really experience if you live in London or New York. But having been in Taiwan and Hong Kong, I've got all of these, I've got one factory that makes computer casing. We designed it because Mr. Perazza, who's a bit of a cult legend really in design world, had a dog. He had show dogs, and they were all named after designers. He had Jasper, he had James, he had Stefano after Stefano Giovannoni. And I flew to England to meet these dogs in a training farm and measured them, and thought, what the hell am I doing? I've gone mad. I'm designing a doghouse, but I'm actually measuring the dogs. And you get into these situations which are really meaningful, and inspiring. I guess one of the most exciting projects that I'm working on now is it's a restaurant in Paris on an island it's an island called Ile Saint-Louis, and it's the sister restaurant to a Michelin star restaurant there, and I've basically been able to do anything I've wanted to do. So it's a very sort of lazy environment, but very expensive environment. It's very high-end food, but very easygoing. Another exciting project is there's a great historical brand in Italy called Brion Vega, who made amazing stereos and things in the 50s and 60s, and I'm redesigning some products for them which we launch soon. This is E-Chair, YI. which I designed for EOQ, which is a Hong Kong-based furniture company. It's a real departure for me because I've always loved Scandinavian furniture and never really known how to approach it, but we found an amazing supplier in China with a half Chinese, half Japanese workforce, and it basically gave me the foundations to design a really comfortable dining chair for restaurants or home. They make aluminium, and that inspired me to think about certain ways of using aluminium. So I think the chair came out of a very different industrial experience, and then actually Amico told me they had a very good wood supplier near their factory. So we started talking about how we can create a sort of more long-lasting, earthy Amico chair with some wood and aluminium. For me, the future of design is about the use of machines and exploiting the sort of complexity of production, because of course as the world becomes more aware of design, and I think generally people who didn't know about design are a lot more aware of it and more sensitive, so the demand for products with integrity is becoming higher and higher, and to keep that integrity it often means a greater level of manufacturing, which means more investment. So on the whole, design is splitting up into two different levels, which is you either compete with quality or you compete with price, and if you compete with price you end up with a lower level product. So that's where the market's going, so it's a good thing for design in the future. I guess ultimately no, because they're two very different objects, both very multifunctional, but you put one in your pocket and you get one on the other. For me, it's not something which should be a hot, sexy topic. It's something which should be rationalized in a probably substantially more serious way. I think hot and sexy is a very bad use for sustainability. I mean, the fact that it becomes fashionable is only good for the cause. Not being an architect, I actually don't really know much about cities. I do live in them, so that gives me a bit of insight. But I guess Hong Kong is a good example because it is one of the few cities where the whole culture hasn't been denuded by development in the inner city. Keeps the locals in there. It's a city with huge banks, and on the pavement you still got people chopping chicken heads off. So just let people keep chopping chicken heads off. Well, wow. Amplify life. I don't know if that's what cities are meant to do, are they? I guess they do. How can they amplify life? I don't know, I think amplification's in your head, isn't it? So you take it in and spit it out. I guess communication and information in the cities is kind of changing now, isn't it? I think the fact that people actually realise that some very fundamental factors actually do affect your inner city is very important. I don't know how easily it is to access that information. I'm a very bad person to answer these questions because I have a very flamboyant life. I don't have any rules. I don't have time. It doesn't matter whether it's 12 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock wherever. I've never had a job. So to actually live in a world of other people who have limitations and restrictions is not anything I've ever appreciated. I guess from the point of view of somebody who's going to get up for work at 12 o'clock, like myself, it's a bad question. Someone who's going to get up at 8 o'clock and work till 5 o'clock, I don't live in any one city. I live in several different places all at the same time, and I don't work in a city. I don't work in my studio. I work on beaches. That sounds like a bit wanky, doesn't it? Neither of those make any form of sense whatsoever, because actually, from my point of view, that's something I take quite seriously out of all those questions, is that I actually design for economy, and economy means keeping myself alive, keeping my dog alive, keeping my mortgage going, keeping the bills, paying the truck driver who delivers things to the factory, keeping the factory workers alive. I'm actually more interested in seeing a product made in the factory and seeing that product being manufactured and understanding that their families have been made alive. So that's actually what is important about design. Those two options are really quite negligible. So it's about economy at the end of the day, and how to be productive with a little bit of integrity, creative integrity. Hong Kong is quite a good example because actually it's such a little place that they're trying to develop the city with a view to maintaining the skyline, but making the street level a little bit more useful for space.
You know, you can't compete in that area when you have historical references, you know, that are so beautiful, you know. So ultimately, you know, to design this was about just catering for an audience that actually care about what they have in their work. You know, they're not people who are pressing down cheapest product. They're people who are wanting something that looks good, but understand culture. Yeah, they just want something.
Okay. And now, if you think about the Wear-It product, how do you see it in the future 10 years?
I guess that's a good question because, you know, 10 years ago, I designed probably the world's first ever Bluetooth speaker. I was, you know, in Hong Kong, and, you know, the turnover, this product was very expensive then, okay? So it was 1,000. We sold it in a very great fashion boutique for less in Paris. And it was a celebration of technology. The design was great. We invested a lot in the project. 10 years on, this product doesn't exist anymore.
It would be injected anodized aluminium foam. It's a process that I've been developing in Asia and doing some exhibitions for around the world. And I think it's got enough potential to keep me excited for 3 years. It's a process that architects have used before, but what I actually did was start making it myself by creating my own tooling, injecting aluminium with gas at 800 degrees Celsius. So we create big sort of, I can only call them as rather big muffins, and then cutting into them and then using companies that normally color telephones or the anodizing on lights like this to color the objects. Yeah, for me, that could keep me entertained probably for the rest of my life, to be honest. There's enough flexibility in the material to keep me excited. No, I think all materials are interesting. It really just depends on the sort of context with which you use them, quite frankly speaking. You know, I've always found plastic quite challenging, mainly because you know, it doesn't age particularly well, but I understand its functionality, which is pretty much the only reason I've never designed an all-in-one plastic chair. But as time goes by, my interest in doing that, regardless of that concept, is growing stronger. So, yeah, you know, every material has its place.
What does about what I do. I think as long as I sort of withhold my own integrity, then I'm happy with it. You know, I know what I want to do in life.
You're stationed in Hong Kong. You've got a studio in Brussels. How is it that we're running into you here in Innsbruck?
I'm having an exhibition sent over from China. It's really the start of a very large tour of things that I've been making in China over the last 3 years. Furniture, tables, chairs, sculptures, lighting, all sorts of different things.
The sensibilities that he brings to his designs are very subtle and very practical, and the overall aesthetics,
But
I think, you know, the whole world's changed a little bit in the sense that it's beginning to appreciate that, you know, the oil and water is starting to separate between low-level design and quality design within sound and audio.
Okay.
So, you know, the fact is, we're in a strange area because some of these products are 50 years old.
Okay,
So
yeah.
to say a product that is Bluetooth will survive in 10 years' time is very complex because maybe technology will be no longer relevant.
Yes.
But then again, it's like cassette or, you know, I never, it's hard to say. Maybe no one, everyone thought vinyl was
Well,
dead.
yeah. Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, but I don't know whether blue technology will, there's obviously a lot of things being developed, but ultimately I think the design will survive. And what is great about Brion Vega is that the design survives and it transcends all of these different technological changes. And design is so strong that it adapts around these changes. So hopefully this project will do the same.
Okay, so thank you very much for being with us, and see you next time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.